Hello and welcome to the Siwi Sofa, where we sit down with some of the most interesting participants at the World Water Week to learn more about the array of water-related issues being discussed this week in Stockholm. My name is Eric Paglia, host of the Siwi Sofa, which is now broadcasting live on the Siwi Media Hub. So tune into that for all the Siwi Sofa sessions throughout the World Water Week. The name of this session is Supplying Rural Areas with Water and Electricity Simultaneously. And I'm joined by representatives of two companies that are leaders in their respective sectors who have forged an alliance to develop a joint offer and a common approach to meet this challenge of supplying rural areas with water and electricity at the same time. So joining me are Martin Vierme, Senior Vice President of Veolia Africa Middle East in charge of operations, and Thierry Barbot, CEO of Odial Solutions. Welcome both of you to the Siwi Sofa. Very nice to have you here. And I should say, just on a bit of a side note, we're dedicating this session to Patrick Rousseau, who's been on the sofa several years in the past, who sadly passed away, a senior executive at Veolia. Very sad to hear that he recently passed away. But to address the business at hand today, we can start perhaps by asking, what is the rationale of bundling urban and rural and water and electricity together?
We are facing a really dramatic situation in rural areas in sub-Saharan Africa. A lot of money has been spent and investment have been made for maybe 30 or even 40 years, but a lot of equipments are broken down. And why? Mainly because there was no maintenance. And we don't have to forget that almost, more than half of the population of those countries are living in rural areas. So we have to do something for those people. But they have benefited from huge amount of investment. They are today not operating, and it's very difficult now to bring more money to that sector because of all this sad history. Mm-hmm. So the idea of bundling rural and urban is to try to attract more money by grabbing together the two sectors and trying to get money from the different donors to urban areas and also to rural areas. Because in rural areas, the projects are very small, they are not expensive somehow, and it's very difficult to mobilize such small money. So by joining it with urban areas, we hope to get like an economy of scale and attracting more money to both sectors.
Why bundle water and electricity? In fact, we really strongly believe that the access to water and electricity, and when I say water, I want to say it's potable water, but it's also proper sanitation, because I think it's also a very huge problem in the African zone and in most developing areas. I think these two services really condition the access to development, to health, to education. So they are very important for a decent life of people. But apart from this reflection, which is more ethical, I think the interest of bundling water and electricity is that it's interesting that you could make transfer between the service of electricity and the service of water. It's a little bit counterintuitive, I must say, because in most developing countries, these are very separate services. And the reason why they are very separate is that people want to have transparencies, to know that money which is paid to the service of electricity is used to develop this service, and the same for water. But actually, I think what proves efficient and what is due by the law in developed countries is not necessarily the same for developing countries. And the experience we have in Veolia, in Morocco, for example, is that it's very interesting to run both services, because the government decided that they would use the money coming from the electricity sector to finance infrastructure in the water sector. And we strongly believe that could help in the goal of giving access to rural areas.
So who are the relevant decision makers when it comes to implementing this very cutting edge approach that you've pioneered here?
First, I want to make a very clear statement about the fact that we are private companies and we are not involved in making any decision in the organization of the service, nor in deciding what is the right tariff and what is the structure of the tariff of the service. And so having said that, this organization of the service is the responsibility of the public authorities. So I think our first aim is to convince the public authorities that there is a real interest to bundle urban and rural areas and water and electricity, because that could really make a very good impact on the access of rural areas, which today are, by the way, not treated. I think when the government really wants to do something in favor of the access to these services, they first think in the cities and mainly in their capital and the main cities in the country, because it's more efficient. They give access to more people at the same time. And in that case, the rural part is always sort of abandoned. And the fact that we bundle the service could really make a difference. So they are our first, the first people we want to touch. And also we want to really convince the international financial organization, because they are the ones who help the government to organize their service, to put up a tender. And if they are convinced that this is a right way, a right model, an interesting model to give more access, then it will be very helpful.
You have to understand, this is a very new approach. So, of course, even if the decision makers and the governments, the IFIs, see in that solution something which is really attractive and which can really address the issue of the rural sector, it's new. So it means they will have to adapt their own procedures, because they will have to change the rules. And they may be scared of changing the rules, because, you know, like me, when you change rules, who is going to play anymore? And the idea is to tell them also that if they decide to change the rule to really address the issue, then can be sure that they will have private companies really to play the new game. And this is a strong message to them, because if they are not convinced of that, they will by all means not change anything. So private companies will really do something to address the issue in the rural sector, because like I said, it is a very, very, very important sector in sub-Saharan Africa, with many, many people, where a lot of things have to be done today.
So you've encountered some mental barriers to this, some administrative barriers, technical barriers you've managed to overcome as you've rolled out this project so far, in terms of people not being used to this way of thinking.
No. There are different issues, of course, to address, and there are some technical issues, because if we are in the process of duplicating what is common in urban areas to rural areas, it means that we have one project, global project, addressing the two sectors, even the two technical sectors, water and energy. So we have to get one way to implement it everywhere. And today this is not the case. You cannot just duplicate in rural areas what is being done in urban areas. So you have to find tools, the necessary tools, to make sure that what is being done in urban areas can also be done in rural areas the same way. So you have the real economy of scale, you have the real implementation methodology, which is the same for both areas. So for that, we had to develop some technical activities. In urban areas, you have private connections for electricity and water. In rural areas, you may have private connection for electricity, but it's very seldom for water. Most of the equipment are public water points. So how do you manage a public water point? Not the same way you do in urban area is not easy. You have to really adapt the concept to the situation. And there are many, many different ways of supplying water from a public water point in rural areas. You have manual pumps, which are still very common in Africa, in small villages. You have solar pumps, you have public standpipes. I mean, you have different. So you have to find one solution which fits all this situation and which is in connection with what is happening in urban areas to make sure that everything comes together at the same time, the same way. So we develop different tools for that. And the other issue is the money. In urban area, you are concentrated. In rural areas, you are in very dispatched area, remote. Imagine a community of 400 people in the bush in West Africa, and you have to manage their water point or their electricity connection. It's much more difficult, and especially how do you secure the money? Because we are all private companies, so it means that there should be an interest both ways. We have to make profit of what we do, and the people have to benefit from the service, from a professional service on the long term. So we had to design some payment system, I will show you, which is adapted to rural areas like this. It's a card where you can charge through the mobile money, so you save, you secure, it's like virtual money. There is no real cash. You have this type of system which can allow prepayment, and then you can also make sure that the money is secure and you can easily collect from all the water points spread all around. This is really a new approach of what is being done in rural area, relying on mobile money, GSM technology, which is spread all over in Africa.
What are these benefits that the rural populations gain from this solution?
Actually, to add up on what Thierry just said, I think the main technical difficulty is that when you run services or you design services in urban areas, you have a network. Basically what you have is a central plant, whether electricity or water or wastewater, and then you have networks, that connect everybody in the city. Whereas in rural areas, as Thierry said, sometimes you are very remote from the nearby city, not the nearby, from the city which is the closest to it. So it's not economically viable to connect these villages because it would mean, hundreds of kilometers of network, which is a nonsense only if you want to supply electricity or water to 400 people or even to several thousand people. So we have to find technical solutions that are local in terms of water and in terms of electricity. And the fact that we design those solutions both in terms of technical furniture of the service, but also in terms of payments and client service, we think that it will really make a difference.
So do you tailor, customize for every location that you go into with this? Is everyone different, or is there some model you use that are applied to various locations?
I wouldn't say that everyone is different because there won't be like 100 models, but I think there will be different models depending on the type of the village, on the size of the village, depending also on the ability of the people to pay the service. For example, Thierry mentioned that very often in Africa you have a fountain that everybody comes to, but in some villages you could imagine that you have connection at the house in electricity, but also in water. And so I think there will be different models, but there will be constants that will be the same in all situations.
Is it primarily now for sub-Saharan Africa, or is there plans to expand this beyond to other areas where you operate in?
It's a very good question. Actually, we had it with Thierry when we first met and we decided to set up this. offer. I work on Africa and Middle East area, so I have sort of, I'm concentrated on Africa, and Thierry was interested to go in other countries, but I think you will admit you are also very much present in Africa, and so since it's a start, we think it's better to start on, not a small area, because Africa is very big, but to start only on Africa.
That's where the problem is the most prevalent. So I think Sub-Saharan Africa is the good focus for this new approach. And we have the proof, in other countries as well, but when the people are using a service, they feel it's useful and it works, they pay for it. Look at the phone. Mobile phone has been expanded in Africa at a high speed like nobody expected. And today, when you look at water, especially in rural areas, you don't have a good service. So people are not ready to pay for it. And I would say this is only common sense. If tomorrow you really deliver a professional service they can rely on, and they know that once they've paid for their water, they don't have to pay for maintenance anymore because this is the duty of the operator, it will change the game. It will change because they know they need water, they know they have a reliable and professional service, so they will pay for it. That's our deep feeling, and that's on what we base our approach, is that even people in rural area, they are able to pay at an affordable price, of course, a fair price, fair for both sides, for them and for the operator, because the operator is to make profit. If there is no profit, there is no sustainability. This is sure for everything. So we have to find the right balance. But we are convinced that those people, full of common sense, will adhere to the service if it is a professional service.
If we look at the most disadvantaged people that the service reaches, what main benefits do they gain from this?
I think it's necessary maybe to define really quickly what most disadvantaged people mean in the sense of the question. Most disadvantaged people are the people who are not able to afford any payment for a service, even when the tariff is very low. And so these people are taken into account, for example, when you are in urban services, by the fact that there are subsidies, tariff transfer between rich people and poor people. And we really think that our model, when it's applied both to the urban area and the rural areas, allows this transfer of tariffs to take place. I think it's good to give an example. For example, in Morocco, you have social tariffs, so the rich people pay for the poor people, but also the industries pay more, and they pay for the citizens that consume water. And you also, as I explained before, have transfer between the electricity service and the water service. And there, in our model, it's very easy to make transfer also from the urban area to the rural areas.
Just to add on, there is another aspect. With the system I showed you that we developed, it's very easy. For instance, you can decide, Eric, to support a family which is a very poor family, maybe not able to afford to pay for water, and you can charge their card from your website, because you
not charge, put money
well,
on
put money on it, sorry. You can put money on it for them to be able to enjoy water. They are like the other, they will pay for their water. The only difference is that they will have benefited from somebody who helped them through the internet to put money on their card. And this is another way to help the most distressed. But you have to know also that as an operator, we pay a fee to the community according to the consumption, and this part of this money, part of this amount, is supposed to take care of the poorest people. I mean, it's the community who knows them better, and with the money which is given to them, with the tax, like a tax which is paid to them, they are able to take care of the poorest. So the idea is not to leave anybody aside. this new approach is really to integrate everybody in the system and to make sure that everybody can enjoy water and electricity in rural areas.
Oh, it's very impressive. So what are the main benefits for your respective companies, for Odial Solutions and for Veolia? What besides the altruistic aspects of it, of benefiting these communities, what do you get out of it through this partnership for your companies?
There are many. There are many. Like Martin said, we've been working in Africa for 40 years. Veolia has also been working in Africa for many years. This is one way to maintain or even develop our business in Africa, because that really address huge issues. I mean, covering a lot of countries, a lot of people. It's a huge market. That is why there is room for many actors. And we would like to be one of those actors. That is one thing. Then there are also some synergies, because they know a lot of things we don't know, and the other way around. We have been concentrating on rural areas. They are mainly concentrating on urban areas. So I think we have to learn from each other how to improve, optimize the service that we want to provide in our respective sectors.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about synergies between our experiences. Actually, in urban areas, these services are, for example, the maintenance service, which is very important for the running of the operations. The maintenance services in urban areas are often large services. They have stock of spare parts, and so they can support maintenance, and when there are serious breakdowns in the rural areas, the people that are in the city can help. And now that there are a lot of digital developments, they can even help in distance the people who are in the field in order to help them to really fix the stuff. Also, you have an organization which is quite structured in terms of client service, in terms of financial services, in terms of all sorts of administrative services. And so these services could be used both for the urban service and the rural service, since they would be together. So that would obviously provide a lot of efficiency. And as Thierry said, we really want to learn from each other, because our experience in Veolia is basically urban, and the experience of Odial is basically rural, and we really think we have big synergies to find together. Moreover, I think we are both engaged we want these countries to have access to water and electricity and to essential services. Actually, it's both in our CSR policies. We really believe we can't be in this continent, Africa, without really doing something for the development of the continent, and so it's our way also to contribute to this development, to this access to water and electricity. I really want to mention that in Veolia it is part of our sustainable development goals, and it's our contribution both to the two development goals, which are 6 and 7, access to water for all and access to electricity for all.
And we have this new decentralization process which has been implemented in Africa for maybe 10 years in certain countries. Now it's the local communities who are in charge of the services like this. So this approach is helping to consider a community as a whole, urban, rural, peri-urban. So our idea is to provide solutions to all the communities, because this is the new interlocutor now. They are in charge, so we bring them a global solution for all the situations that they may face in their commune. And this is also something very new and very in line with what is to be done in the future.
But then again, we are not the ones who make the decision. The decision is
No.
to the local authorities. So we really want to convince them that it's a good solution for global access to these services.
Well, it sounds like a perfect and very fascinating partnership you've developed here, and this project that you're implementing together seems like it's benefiting a really wide range of stakeholders. So I thank you for coming here on the sofa and joining us and sharing this with us, and wish you all the best in the future with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to the Siwi Sofa. Stay tuned for more sessions throughout this World Water Week.